What's good everybody? Today's video is that back workout at home for both men and women. I feel like your back is the most important large muscle group on your body, especially from an exercise perspective. Having a strong back is usually an indicator of your overall strength levels. And talking from just a home workout perspective, I feel that a lot of people ignore working their back. So everyone knows how to do a push-up, and usually when you're talking about home workouts, everyone will do push-ups. But in the process, you end up overworking your chest and underworking your back. The result is that it pulls your shoulders in front, and that causes you to have a bad posture. So whether you're someone who wants to correct your overall posture, or if you're someone who wants a V-taper, especially for you guys, or even if you're just a girl who's just looking to increase the strength levels of her back, today's workout video is for you. As usual, firstly, we'll go over the basic form of some of the exercises, and also keep in mind, in order to perform today's exercises, you do not need to have a pair of dumbbells, but obviously dumbbells will help. I've put a link in the description below if you want to buy your own dumbbells. But also keep in mind, as always on BeerBiceps, we're going to make use of a heavy bag to replace dumbbells for all those people who don't have dumbbells at home. So let's get straight into the form, but more importantly, the science of a back workout. The number one exercise to build your back is a pull-up. Now I know that not everyone has a pull-up bar at home, but if you're very serious about your home workouts, it's a good idea to have it installed. Keep in mind, you will get results even without a pull-up bar, but the truth is that just in terms of results, in terms of how strong you can get, there's nothing that works your back like a good old pull-up. Very quickly, let me go over the form. The basics of the pull-up form, firstly, are that you need to follow a full range of motion. A lot of people end up doing half pull-ups because they think they're building tension in your back, but that's not how you do it. You need to hit your pull-ups with a full range of motion. Go as low as you can and then pull yourself as high as it goes. Secondly, where do you place your hands? There's different ways of performing a pull-up, but for beginners, what I usually advise is that you take your hands straight over your shoulders and increase the angle by about 20 to 30 degrees. Straight up and then slightly wider than that, about that width is good enough. Now, if you break down a pull-up into the form that you're supposed to perform it with, it's a little bit complicated. But as for beginners, just concentrate on having a full range of motion. That'll do most of the things for you. Also keep in mind, a super tip is that when you're performing a pull-up, think of your lower arm as a coin and the side of your body as a coin slot. So whenever you're performing the pull-up, try putting the coin into the slot. That's how you target your latissimus dorsi or your lats. Now, most people don't have pull-up bars at home, but if you do, then your entire back workout can just be finished on the pull-up bar by doing different variations of your grip. So if you're someone who just wants to master the pull-up, master back strength levels, just perform about 10 sets of pull-ups for your back workout, and that'll be enough even in the long term. But for the rest of us who don't have pull-up bars at home, that's where a dumbbell and a heavy bag come into play. The first exercise that we're going to talk about is the basic deadlift, but to be done at home. Now in the gym, a deadlift is a very technical movement. But if we're talking about it from a home workout perspective, let me just give you some quick tips. Firstly, once again, start with your feet about shoulder width apart, and very importantly, keep your legs slightly bent through the movement. If you keep your legs straight through the movement, you'll be targeting your hamstrings, that's the back of your legs, instead of your lower back. The point of the deadlift is to target your lower back, another crucial element in your overall strength levels. So what you want to do is bend your legs a little bit, keep your lower back tight throughout the movement. That's the basic beginner's mistake that a lot of people make. They'll end up curving their back a little bit. Instead, you want to keep your back extremely tight throughout the movement. Number one precaution. Next, you've got to keep your chest out a little bit, and very importantly, keep your neck neutral. Chest out, lower back arched, neck neutral. That's in the same line as your spine. So no bending down, no looking up, just keep it in the same line. Keep a neutral line. Finally, while we're talking about your arms, all you've got to keep in mind is that your grip has to be extremely tight, but at the same time, you don't want to use your arms for this particular movement. So you want to keep your arms loose. So the rules when it comes to your arm is that you want to keep absolutely zero tension in the length of your arm. You shouldn't be using any part of your arm except for your hand. Grip the dumbbell extremely tightly, but don't keep any tension through the rest of your arm. And the final precaution is that you want to keep your shoulders retracted through the movement. This is a slightly technical lift, but if you didn't follow all these rules, try watching this part of the video again. It's very crucial to perform the deadlift effectively. You can end up hurting yourself if you don't perform it effectively. But also keep in mind, you'll only end up hurting yourself if you're using a heavy weight. If you use basic light dumbbells, there's nothing like this movement to work your lower back. Try mastering the deadlift form. Also, before we move on to the next exercise, keep in mind that if you don't have dumbbells at home, you can perform this movement with just a heavy bag. Grip your bag in such a way that the weight of your books inside the bag is equally distributed amongst your two arms. This is how I would perform this particular movement. Once again, the bag is just like a barbell in the gym. So now that we're done with the lower back, let's move on to the upper back. That's your lats, your latissimus dorsi, or your wings, as well as your rhomboid. A lot of women are afraid of working the back because they don't want that V-taper. Keep in mind that your body is going to react differently to these movements when you compare it to the effects it has on a guy's body. So you can perform these movements without any fear. Now moving on to the upper back movements, the first exercise we're talking about is the two-arm row, or the basic barbell row that we'll simulate at home with dumbbells. The rules for this movement is, once again, your feet should be slightly wider than shoulder width. You need to bend down, and very importantly, keep your lower back tight. Try keeping an arch in your lower back. So same rules as the deadlift. Keep a tight lower back, keep your chest slightly out, and very importantly, your arms need to graze the sides of your body. You need to remember this as a rule for beginners. When you're a beginner doing this two-arm row movement, this is the best way to target your lats as well as your rhomboids, which add to the thickness of your back. Remember, while performing this pulling movement, you ideally want to keep your torso parallel to the ground. If it's not going parallel, keep it as parallel as possible. And also keep in mind, your legs don't have to be tight. Your legs, that's your knee joint primarily, can even be bent a little bit. You need to give priority to your torso being parallel to the ground, and you need to give priority to a full range of motion as with any movement. Keep your lower back tight, graze your arms against the sides of your body, and keep your legs slightly bent through the movement. Primary precautions. Moving on to the sister movement of the two-arm row, we're talking about the one-arm row, where we just target one side of our back at a time. So the precautions are very similar to the two-arm row. Keep your lower back arched, keep your chest slightly out, try keeping your torso parallel to the ground. But where this movement is different is in terms of your limbs. Now keep in mind, you're only using one arm in this movement. So one arm will graze against the side. The active arm has to graze against the side of your body. But the non-active arm has to stay a little bit loose. A lot of people make this mistake of keeping your non-active arm tight. That's not how it's done. Keep it slightly loose. And as for your legs, keep in mind we're performing this on the side of your bed. So keep one leg up, keep the other leg out and behind a little bit. Behind because you want space for your arm to move in this particular movement. So just focus on your limbs, but otherwise the precautions are the same as the two-arm row. And as always, with any rowing movement, you can replace dumbbells with a heavy bag. So these were the movements to affect the muscles in your back, to increase the strength of your lats, your rhomboids, and to increase the size if you're a guy. But if you want to correct posture, this particular movement that we're going to talk about next, that's very important. It's the rear Delt Fly. What does this work? It works the back side of your shoulders, that's your posterior deltoid, as well as the muscles in your scapular region. That's the muscles exactly behind your chest. So if your chest is here, think of a chest behind me, which is kind of creepy, but you guys know what I mean. Those are the muscles that you target through this particular movement. How do you do this? Once again, you work on the corner of your bed like we did in the chest workout for beginners. BeerBiceps video plugin as always. But coming to the form of the rear Delt Fly, the only thing you've got to keep in mind is your arm angle. Remember, this is an isolation movement. An isolation movement is where you use only one joint, which in this case is your shoulder joint. The only joint that moves should be your shoulder, and every other joint should be solid. So you take a couple of dumbbells, keep your arm angle solid, and just focus on squeezing at the top. So that part of your back that's at the center, at the end of your movement, you try squeezing it a little bit to work that particular muscle. Just keep your arm angle solid and the rest of the movement will take care of itself. Also, before we move on to the next movement, if you don't have dumbbells at home, you'll have to perform this particular movement with a bag. Do not ignore this movement if you don't have dumbbells at home, because this is very important for your overall posture, how you stand. How do you perform this if you don't have dumbbells? You do one side at a time with a heavy bag. If you don't have enough space to do it at the edge of your bed, try loading up your bed with a few layers. Maybe put a thick blanket at the corner of your bed and then perform this movement just to get a good full range of motion. That's when we can move on to the next movement. And the final body part we're targeting today is your trapezius muscles, which are those Brock Lesnar muscles for guys. But keep in mind, even if you're a girl, it's important to work these particular muscles for the overall strength of your back. Remember, you aren't going to end up looking like Brock Lesnar. Instead, you're going to end up looking something like Priyanka Chopra. So let's talk about targeting your traps, which technically aren't exactly a part of your back, and they even get worked out in shoulder workouts. But for today's video, we're going to include it in this back workout. So the movement is called the shrug, and the only precautions involved in a shrug are, once again, your arm angle needs to be constant. Remember, a shrug is this movement. So you're working your traps by pulling your arms and your scapula upwards. Now, if you end up using your arm muscles to pull the weight upwards, you're actually ending up working your arm. But instead, you want to work only this part of your body between your neck and your shoulders. So the only precautions you've got to take are that your arm angle has to be extremely constant, your grip has to be tight, your legs can be slightly bent at the knee, and you can bend slightly forward with your lower back. Try targeting this particular muscle that's between your shoulder and your neck, and you're good to go. If you don't have dumbbells at home, feel free to use the handle on your bag. So now that we're done with how to do the exercises, let's talk about the actual exercise plan, which goes one of two ways. So plan A is if you have a pull-up bar at home, and plan B is if you don't have a pull-up bar at home. Let's talk about plan A first. The only difference in the two plans is that in plan A, you will replace the two rowing movements with pull-ups. So plan A will start with 5 to 8 sets of pull-ups, and that's when you can move on to targeting your other muscle groups. Also keep in mind, when we're talking about dumbbell-based movements, resistance-based movements, and not free body movements like the pull-up, only go to about 80% of failure. As I've always said, 80% of failure is when you're performing a particular set to the point where you feel a burn, but where you're not entirely burnt out, where your body still has a little bit of fuel left in the tank. So let's start with the first exercise, your basic dumbbell deadlift, as I spoke about. You want to do 3 sets where you go up to 80% of failure. So that's usually 10 to 12 to 14 reps. 3 sets with this rep range. Next, you can move on to working your rear delts as well as your scapula. Once again, 3 sets where you hit 10 to 12 to 14 reps. And finally, you can move on to working out your traps. 3 sets, 10, 12, 14 reps. No difference. But while we're talking about plan B, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. The second half of the plan is the same, but you only replace the pull-ups with rowing movements. Firstly, perform the 2-arm row, 4 sets, 10, 12, 14, 16. Then perform the 1-arm row, 10, 12, 14, 16 for both sides. Once you're done with the rowing movements, you can follow the same protocols I spoke about in plan A for the rest of the workout. If the exercise plan isn't clear to you from the video, keep in mind the written version is in the description box. You know what else is in the description box? The link to my basic home workout series. If you're someone who's beginning your fitness journey, I've explained the form as well as exercise plans for all the possible workouts you can think of in that particular playlist. But if you're someone who wants to know the detailed science behind working out, make sure you check out the Bollywood Bodies playlist, and make sure you subscribe to BeerBiceps. Until next time guys, from Ranveer, see you.